many of you have the new Snoop Dogg album? Okay, back away. Next question. How many of you have seen Boys in the Hood? How many of you have been in juvenile hall or jail for any length of time? Does the refugee camp count? You decide. How many of you know someone in a gang? How many of you are gang members? Okay, that was a stupid question, wasn't it? Yeah. Not allowed gang affiliations in school. I apologize for asking, my badness. Okay, now I'm going to ask you a more serious question. Stand on the line if you've lost a friend to gang violence. Stay on the line if you've lost more than one friend. 3. 4 or more. Okay, I'd like us to pay respect to those people now. Wherever you are, just speak their name.
Good morning again, everybody. Good to be the church, good to be here. Confirmants, welcome to you. I have to tell you that there was a day a few years ago when confirmation was a little bit different than it is now. I don't remember this day because it happened before me, but I know that in some churches, a matter of fact, Ben, I was at your church when you did something called Examination Day, right? Yeah, everybody. Some of you are shaking your heads. You know what that is. And so basically what we'd do is you'd sit in the panel up front here, and the whole congregation's out there, and the pastor would fire questions at you. And then you were expected to answer them. Like, so Tristan, what's the explanation to the third article of the Apostles' Creed in Luther's Small Catechism? And you'd be able to rattle that puppy off because you've been spending time for that moment sitting up front. We don't do that anymore, do we? That's an all right thing. My first congregation, they had a really cool, interesting twist. So if you'd ask the student the question and the student didn't know the answer, the pastor would then turn to the parent and ask them the question and see if they could answer it. So, you know, there was some how do you say this, incentive for the parents to help their children learn the catechism. So we don't do that here, you know, and it's not to say that memorizing things isn't a bad thing, because it's a good thing. It's a good thing to know your Bible, to have portions of it committed to memory, because you can carry it with you wherever you go. But you know, sometimes, at least in our tradition, the memory work became more important than the person sometimes. And really, when we're talking about confirmation, what we're talking about here is the human heart and the way you guys have hopefully connected with Jesus through the confirmation and through your experience here at First Lutheran, and the way that after you confirm your faith, you will hopefully continue in that relationship with God and with this faith community. So that's what confirmation is about, and I don't know why I went into that exactly, except that I think it's important that y'all know that that's why we're here. So the movie I just showed you the clip I just showed you is from a 2007 movie called Leaders. And it is a true story about a woman who, her name was Erin Gruwell. She was this bright-eyed, young, very white, very idealistic teacher who agreed to and volunteered to go into high school in Long Beach, California. True story. Because she wanted to try to change the world. And of course, she got there, and she found that Woodrow Wilson was not the place it used to be. At one time, it was a really good school, but then integration came, and the place just turned into a mess. And as Ava, one of her Hispanic students, who was featured in that little clip, as Ava would say, the school was just like the rest of the world. It was all these tribes. So you had little Cambodia. Those were the Asian kids, and you had the ghetto, that was the black kids, and you had Wonder Bread Land, that was the white kids, and then she said, and then you had us, south of the border, or Little Tijuana. Am I cutting out here? Oh, okay. Is this better? Okay. So by the way, you know how I am with microphone techniques, so just like do this, make sure I'm holding it up if I'm missing. Okay, because sometimes I'll do this and I'll forget. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So they have all these tribes, and no one trusts anyone else. One tribe is set against the other, and the tension is so thick in this school and around this community that you could cut it with a knife. I mean, Woodrow Wilson High School was a tinderbox that could at any moment explode into all-out war between these groups of people, between these tribes and these dividing lines. And the territories were so intense and so entrenched that there's a scene in the movie a little bit earlier where Mrs. G, as they call her, she tried to move 2 students, and it almost erupted into an all-out fist fight. Because all of a sudden you're moving territory, you're moving kids where they're not supposed to be, they're crossing lines. And so this scene that you just saw is just a little bit of a breakthrough, because what she does is she lays down this tape, and she plays this little game, and she has everybody who you can agree with this, or this is what you've done, step up to the line. And so if you have the latest Snoop Dogg album, step up to the line. Of course, they all step up, and so on and so forth, and then it starts getting serious. If you've ever been in detention, step up to the line. If you've ever lost a friend to gang violence, step up to the line. And they all step up. And standing right next to them is someone from the other side of the street. Someone who has been responsible maybe for the loss of their friend because of the color of his or her skin. And they're eye to eye, toe to toe with someone else that they can blame for all their problems. But they're not up to that line to fight with each other. And they're not up to that line to blame each other and to hold those resentments and to get payback. They're up to that line to say, hey, that's me. And we're stepping up here to this line for exactly the same reason. And it's a reason so big and so deep that it just cuts through skin color and gender and race and resentment and hatred and animosity and fear. cuts right down to the core of who we are until it's just one human being looking into the eye of another human being. And both of them are hurting. Let's sing. So there's a story in the book of Matthew, 26th chapter, and it's a story of Jesus, and he's talking to some scribes and some Pharisees. And he's rather hard on them, and he says, you know, you people, you love your religious traditions, he says. And you love to, as part of those religious traditions, a part of being faithful to God, you like to wash pots and pans and cups and be clean, because that's part of who you are as Jewish people. And that's fine, Jesus says, but you know something? I know what's happening here. Your lives are like that. You wash the outside of the cup, but the inside of the cup is dirty. And then he goes on to say, he says, you hypocrites, he says, your lives are like whitewashed tombs. They look beautiful on the outside, but you know something? In every tomb, what is there? Nothing but a pile of dead bones. But Jesus is really hard on them. And maybe for good reason. I don't know. He calls them hypocrites, and that's what they are. But you know, something this last couple of weeks, a sermon I preached 2 weeks ago, which I'm going to refer to again later, something's been sticking with me. And I can't quite shake it, and I want to revisit it again today. So 2 weeks ago, we were talking about another lesson where the Pharisee, and by the way, Pharisees and scribes, those are the church people. The scribes are the pastors. The Pharisees are the good church people. Basically, that's what they are, right? And so there's this Pharisee and there's this tax collector, and they're both praying in the church. And the Pharisee's up front praying, and because that's where he belongs. He's earned that spot. He's a person of reputation. And the tax collector is outside praying because he doesn't belong in there. He's not good enough. And the Pharisee says to God, he says, I'm glad I am who I am. I'm glad I'm not like those others. And you know, you read that just like I read the lesson that I just told you, and you think, what a phony. Come on. Who do you think you are? But you know, truth be told, let's just treat the Pharisee for a minute as a human and give him the respect he is. Truth be told, he's right about who he is. I mean, when it comes to being religious and being faithful to God, he's done the deal. Just like I said a couple of weeks ago. This is a little review for those of you who came. I apologize, but hang with me. He's done the deal, right? He has been religious and he has been faithful to God, and he has followed his faith to the letter. The Pharisee is a good community person. He gives freely to the church and very much so out of his wealth. He is a patriot. He is all of these things. He's an upstanding citizen who cares about his community. In a lot of ways, he's like you and me. And so when he says that, he says, man, I wish the world wasn't like this, and I'm glad I'm not like that. I'm glad there's people out there that aren't like that, like me. When he says that, he's completely justified. He's right. He's completely justified in saying what he says and feeling the way he does about not only himself, but also those others who are not doing the deal and not being the community members. I mean, the tax collector is working for the enemy, and he's fleecing people right and left.
in the process. This is not a good person. Pharisee's right. He's completely justified. Now, here's the deal. I could go around every group of people in the New Testament and tell their story, from fishermen to shepherds to tax collectors to scribes and to Pharisees and to everybody else. I could go to every ethnic group, Jews, Gentiles, Samaritans, and whatever else happens to be there. I could talk about men and I could talk about women, and I could tell their story, and it is a story that always ends in justified resentment. They have reasons they don't like each other. They don't trust each other. They are afraid of each other. And those reasons are based in fact. They're completely justified in believing what they believe about the other groups that are in their lives, and that they would be better off without those groups in their lives. A lot like what's happening up there with the Freedom Riders, right? And so the Pharisee looks down on the fisherman and says, not doing the deal. The fisherman resents the Pharisee for being so haughty, such a phony, and all the while taking his wealth and using it to fleece others. And Gentiles mistrust Jews, and Jews hate Samaritans, and Samaritans hate Jews, and everyone is completely justified in the way they feel and what they do. And I have to wonder if that word justified and all that it means isn't tainting the souls in which it resides. If that isn't the dirt in those outwardly clean cups we call our lives, and the bones in our whitewashed tombs that we live in every single day. I wonder. Let's sing. So, I don't know what it is, but for whatever reason, that sermon 2 weeks ago has been working on me, and for whatever reason, it's just, it wasn't finished, and I felt like I had to finish it today. A little postscript to one of the clips I showed last week, or 2 weeks ago, excuse me. We had somebody in between last week, and by the way, wasn't that fun? She was just amazing. So 2 weeks ago, I showed this clip. It's Ellen DeGeneres. Many of you have seen it, and she's at her show, and she's defending her friendship with George W. Bush, the President of the United States. And, everybody's asking, what is a gay Hollywood liberal and a conservative ex-president doing sitting next to each other and enjoying each other's company? And, of course, she defends it and she gets laced for it. But then a few days later, this is the postscript, there was a presidential debate. And Anderson Cooper was one of the moderators. Have you all seen this? The last question that he asks, he refers to Ellen DeGeneres and this going on the show and defending her friendship with the Bushes. And then he asked the questions of the candidates. He said, Tell us about a friendship that might surprise us and how that friendship has changed you and your convictions. It's the last question in the debate. And Anderson Cooper got creamed for asking that question. Absolutely creamed. Why are you throwing us softballs like that when there are other big issues that we haven't even touched on this debate? My friends, it was the most important question of the evening. The most important question of the night. And I know we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but for whatever reason, it's still hanging there for me. And it needs to hang there for you because there's more to say about this. You see, all of us have been hurt. Every single one of us. And all of us hold resentment and anger and fear for those who have hurt us. That's behind so much of the rancor that's going on in our country right now. And what's more is that anger and that resentment and that fear and that hatred is completely justified. You're absolutely fair and right in feeling that way about what's happening to you or the group of people with whom you identify. And I think this keeps coming back to me because I think we need to understand what it is that's happening in all of this and what it's doing to our souls. Because while it's all justified, it's also poisoning our lives so that all we do is see the anger and the resentment and the fear and the hatred that bubbles up within us. It's poisoning us. There's one more little fact that I'd like you to know about the lesson I just told you about. Jesus has this conversations with the scribes and the Pharisees in the last week of his life, between Palm Sunday and Good Friday. And that's no mistake. Because what he's about to do on Good Friday is lay down a strip of tape across our world. It's called the cross. And he's going to ask you a few questions. And step up to the line if this is you. Have you been hurt? Step up to the line. And then you'll look to your right, to your left, and you'll see that the people that are standing next to you are the same people that have maybe hurt you. And you'll look across the line, and you'll be eyeball to eyeball with someone who's been the cause of all your problems. And I want you to notice, they stepped up to the line too. They've been hurt. They know anger. They know resentment. And they're standing next to you. And maybe the one that you're looking eyeball to eyeball with is the one who's hurt you, or the group of people who have caused you all the problems that you feel that you have in this life. Step up to the line. Step up to the cross. And when you do, the world begins to change. Because stepping up to that cross has a way of putting things into perspective. It strips away the race, the class, the genders. It wipes out the hatreds and the resentments and the fear and the animosities. And it gets down to the very basics of who we are. One hurting person looking into the eyes of another. No blame, no fight, no tribe. It's just you and me. And when that happens to even a small group of people, it changes everything. It changes who we are. It changes how we do business. I want to show you one more clip from this movie. It's at the end of the movie, and the students have been reading The Diary of Anne Frank. And they invite Miep Gies. She is the woman who has hidden Anne Frank for 2 years. And then, of course, Anne Frank gets discovered, and Miep's life is also in danger. And they invite her to come to her classroom, and she comes from Holland to sit with them and talk with them. Listen.
The bounty on a Jew was about $2. Someone desperate for money told the Gestapo. On August 4th, they stormed into my office, and a man pointed a gun at me and said, "Not a sound, not one word." And then they went straight upstairs to the attic. I felt so helpless. I could hear Anne screaming, objects being thrown around, so I ran back to my house. I looked for an earring or knickknacks, anything I could take back with me to bribe them. So I took this back with me, all these things, and the soldier there took out his gun and put it against my head. You could be shot for hiding a Jew or go to camp. So another soldier recognized my accent. He was Austrian, and so was I. But I had been adopted by a Dutch family. So he told the soldier with the gun to let me go. There isn't a day that I don't remember August 4th. And I think about Anne Frank. Yes?
I've never had a hero before, but you are my hero.
Oh, no. No, young man, no. I am not a hero. No, I did what I had to do because it was the right thing to do. That is all. We are all ordinary people, but even an ordinary secretary or a housewife or a teenager can, within their own small ways, turn on a small light in a dark room. Yeah?
Confirmants, parents, friends. There are all kinds of ways we divide each other. And there are all kinds of ways that we find to maintain those divisions. And they're all justified. The hurts, the anger, the resentment. Don't let those things define your life.
There's a line called the cross. Step up to it. Bring whatever it is that is your trial and your hurt. Everything that is completely justified, bring it there and see who steps up with you. It will probably be a small group because, truth be told, the world's going to continue on just the way it is. But not for us. Change is here. Change is now. Because, as Meeb said, anybody can be a light in a dark room. A light that starts with the line of the cross. Thanks be to God. Amen.